And welcome to our webinar today on how architects can get press for their business. My name's Tara Rizzi. I know most of you, I think. I'm the Executive Director of AIA Santa Barbara. Today's event qualifies for one learning unit for AIA architects. If you have questions during the presentation, please write it in the chat box and Jade will answer it towards the end of the presentation. Jade Flogurzi is our speaker today. She's the founder and owner of Clever Punch, a local PR company working to support local businesses get their name in front of the media. So over to you, Jade.
Great, thank you. All right, let me go straight to my presentation here. All right. I'm so excited. Thank you for coming and for taking the time. It shows that this is an interesting topic to you. So that's great to hear and to see. It was an interesting topic for me as well, probably about 6 years ago when I worked for a business and was working with their marketing and was trying to figure out how do we get press about this business and getting it out there because it was a new business. So I found the press world and PR world to be mysterious. And so what I'm sharing today is what I've learned since then. And hopefully it kind of peels back those kind of mysterious or intimidating layers and gives you some really tangible pieces of information that you can use on your own business. That is really what we try to do with our marketing team in general, is to just strip away the nonsense and the fancy jargon and really get down to simple, basic, straightforward, how do we do great marketing for businesses? So here's what we're going to go through. What is press? The difference between editorial, advertorial, and paid print. What does it cost? What do PR firms do? What's our strategy when it comes to getting businesses press and how in turn you can use that for yourself? And then I'll give 3 examples of some great wins that we've had with getting press. And then we can talk about ideas for press for your own business and answer questions that you have. So first, a disclaimer. We're a marketing team, but I wouldn't call us a PR team. I've worked with PR teams. I've talked with them before. I've gotten proposals from them. Obviously, you're going to get different takes on press and on marketing in general from different people. So this is our take. We are a very down-to-earth team. We're very straightforward with what we do. And so it's going to be a little bit different than if you were to go to a PR, exclusively a PR team. So to give you context about us, our team is Clever Punch. We're a marketing company. We're a couple years old, but most of our clients are in the housing and construction industry. So we work with interior designers, general contractors, a few businesses in the construction trades, landscape, and architects. And we worked with 40 clients so far. We have about 30 websites that we've built. We work with 18 clients ongoing. And the reason I give you this context is because, as I mentioned previously, I used to work for a winery. I was internal in their marketing team. And I was a project manager. So I was in charge of finding our contractor, finding our architect, finding our land use planner, vineyard manager, financial advisors, and our marketing and branding team. And when it came to marketing and branding, that was the most frustrating experience out of all of it. And so again, I felt like with press, it was so mysterious and unclear how to get press, if you were going to enlist a PR agency, what it was you were paying for. And so that really has fueled me to this day to make this information available to people, to find out what really does work and share that with everyone. And in the effort of, wanting to advance all these businesses and help them be better. So that's just to give you context of where I'm coming from with this information. So what is press? First off, editorial is going to be your long form stories. So typically they're several pages long. They can be in a newspaper or a magazine or online. Press in general, the goal for a publication is to be unbiased, right? So as a reader, you can kind of get that intuition when you're reading something, if it is unbiased or not. If it starts to feel like an advertisement, that kind of like BS radar goes off in your mind, like, wait a minute. Then you're flipping through the publication and kind of judging its credibility, right? So at the core, all publications, all press outlets strive to be unbiased so that they can keep the trust of their readers. So that's an important part that we'll refer back to, is that press, we try to make it unbiased. So editorial is like your biggest win. That's your gold star for getting press about your business. If you can get a publication or a news outlet to write or to cover a long form story, that's amazing. That's worth, sometimes it's hard to put a price on what that's worth. Next, we have advertorial. So this is a blend between editorial and paid advertising. You still pay for the spot in the publication, but you design it in a way to come across like editorial coverage. So you have probably experienced this yourself when looking through publications. You're reading through something, it catches your interest. It's an article, it's maybe a page or 2 pages, and it's interesting. And so you find yourself reading it, and then halfway through, you're like, wait a minute, is this a print ad or am I reading a real story? And as a requirement, they have to put on there that it is paid advertising. So you'll see somewhere in small print on that page that it is a paid placement. Advertorial placements are actually a great place to be if you can't get coverage from an editorial perspective. So sometimes you feel very strongly that you need to get this message out there, or that you just need eyes on your business, and you can't get a publication to cover you from an editorial perspective. They won't write a story on you, basically. So an advertorial is a great option where you pay to have that placement, but you get full control over what the story says, the way it's laid out, the design. So that's advertorial. Then you have paid advertising, which is obviously your ads that, you know, you have a half page, quarter page, full page, and they are designed and laid out much differently. They are there to make kind of like a disruptive impact. You want them to be eye-catching. Most often you want them to be repetitive. So it's very common for businesses to run the same design on ads over and over again, because it's that repetitiveness that they're going after, so that their business is recognizable to people. So those are the 3 differences. So what does press cost? A question that I had and that I get a lot is, are these businesses paying off publications to write stories for them, right? It's a very, very common question. And from what I've come across, I don't see that to be the case. If anything like that's happening, it's probably more under the radar, like they're taking care of editors or they're taking care of writers to get stories published, but not outright paying for the placement of them. So editorial, from your point of view, is free advertising if you can get a story run about you. Advertorial, I've seen, typically it depends on the publication. A single page ad in Santa Barbara Magazine can be up to $5,000. Something in a newspaper can be several $100s. So it ranges there. And then same with paid print. So same pricing on advertorial and paid advertising. What does it cost to work with a PR firm? And what does that mean? I've seen proposals for PR firms. They're typically always on retainer, and they usually are in the several $1,000s per month range. And I'll go into more about what that typically includes if you are interested in reaching out to a PR firm and want to know more about what that's like. So I left this question here: is the paper plate method relevant? What that means is, if you're a business and you are paying for paid print advertisements in a magazine, is that garnering a story eventually? So that's a question that comes up a lot. And sometimes businesses assume, if I've paid for paid advertising, I should eventually get a story. That just seems like it's fair and right, and that's maybe the way that other people do it. This is where it gets a little bit gray, and there's definitely publications where it's obvious that that's the case. And as a reader, as just the normal public reader, you can tell when you flip through it, because You've seen the same business advertising in there for months and months and months and months. And then, oh, here we are. There's a story about them. There are definitely publications that try to avoid that at all costs. And when you try to use that angle of like, hey, we've been paying for paid advertising, it doesn't really get you anywhere. And that's because, again, they're trying to stay at that core of being true to their readers and credible and honest with what they're doing. So in our experience, this paper plate method doesn't really work if it's a credible publication. Okay, a little bit more about a PR firm or a public relations firm and what they do. So, and the difference between working with them versus a standard marketing agency. So if you were to work with a PR firm exclusively, you went to them because you wanted to get press coverage, they're obviously going to just be a lot more niche in the services that they offer. So one of the main things they'll do is they'll take what's been given from a marketing perspective, which is usually very complimentary. So like if I'm a marketing company and you're one of my clients, I'm going to take your business and what you do, and I'm going to shine a light on it. I'm going to really exaggerate how great you are. That's my goal, is to be your biggest cheerleader, and for everything I create for you to come across really well done and professional, and kind of taking that the poetic licensing as far as I can. A PR firm wants to get stories published about you, so they'll take that same information and kind of take the shine off of it so that it is straightforward and unbiased and can be and it's information that can be presented to publications in a very straightforward, unbiased way so that the publication takes you seriously. So that's one of the services that they'll do, is they'll take that language, they'll make it unbiased so that it's ready to share with a publication. They'll also handle press kits and PR packages. If it's a new product or a new business that's launched, they'll take care of sending those to key influential people. They typically have relationships with editors and writers, and then of course they will come up with how to script and pitch your story. But how has press changed? So everything that I explained with a PR firm used to be a lot more relevant and a lot more valuable, I would say. But in more previous years, the internet has really changed things. So nowadays, somebody that works for a publication can find any information that they want or need on the internet, right? Whereas before, they maybe would be relying on a PR firm to get that information. Now they can find it on their own. And from what I've heard, they really like to find out those things on their own. They can be in control of the story and finding the key pieces that they want to fit the story that they're writing. The other reason that it's changed is because there's a lot more turnover in roles than there used to be. So in the past, if I was a PR firm and I had great relationships with editors or writers, then those would be like eggs in my basket, right? But nowadays, the roles are changing so quickly that they don't really have that same value, because somebody that they're friends with, that editor, has moved on and now they're starting over from scratch. So those are two ways that the industry has really changed. And when it comes to press, and your relationship with press, with publications, with PR agents, has really changed as well. So who are the key relationships when it comes to press and what matters to them? So there's three that are the most important. You have your sales agent, you have your editor, and you have your writer at the news publication. So sales agent is the person that you likely have heard from before. So they write to you, they're very friendly, they're very personable, they are great at creating and maintaining relationships and keeping touch with everybody. They're very friendly, they're very helpful. They reach out to you with specials. They reach out to you with kind of like a sense of urgency of the next great thing that's happening with the publication and how you should want to be a part of it. Your relationship with them, though, is exclusively about print advertising. That is all that they are after with their goal. And so if you form a relationship with them, that's great. And it might be nice to stay in the loop on specials that come up or features that are coming up that you want to have your business included in. But when it comes to talking about getting a story run from an editorial perspective, they are in completely different worlds. And in my experience, the sales agent almost comes across as if they have no contact or control of the editor. So my point in sharing that with my experience is that if you are friends with a sales agent in hopes of getting editorial coverage, it's probably not a good use of your time or energy because, again, they have those blinders on. They're there to get print advertising done. And the editor and the writers are in a different lane. So that brings us to the editor and what matters to them. So editor is in charge of everything that goes in that final publication. They call the shots on the stories that are going to be run. And what matters to them is, again, the trust and the credibility of the publication and making sure that they're creating something every month or every week or every day that appeals to its readers. Because if they lose that, they've lost everything. And there's no point to even having print advertising if it's a publication that people aren't reading or enjoying. So that's always going to be their main goal. The writers are obviously usually most often freelance. They're writing the stories and they are pitching to the editor what story they want to get published and getting the green light on writing that story and trying to figure out when it's going to fit into the timeline for the publication. What matters to the writer and what matters to the editor are very different. Again, the editor wants good stories. The writer wants their stories published, but they also, they're freelance. So they're not making a ton of money. This might be a side gig for them and they have their day-to-day career and this is something they do on the side. So what they're interested in is getting stories published because that's a great, notch in your belt as a writer, but also the perks that come with it and finding stories that are interesting to them. So the reason that I share this information is if you know of editors or of writers and you're trying to figure out how can I appeal to them, how can I get my business in front of them, editors want great stories. Writers love to be taken care of. And if there's anything that you could do to enhance the experience for a writer and make their coverage for you more enjoyable, they'll really love that. And then they'll be motivated to be pushing the editor to get their story published. So those are a few things to keep in mind if you come across these relationships. Okay, here is our strategy for getting press. Again, disclaimer, we aren't a PR firm. I don't have an educational background in press. This is just me working with a company, wanting to get stories published and trying to figure out how the heck you do it, and meeting with different editors of publications and talking with writers and kind of breaking down and demystifying this whole process. So our process when it comes to press is first, we determine if this is a story worth telling. So we have our clients that we work with, right? Some of them have press as part of the services that we offer in their monthly package. If that's the case, we are constantly keeping our antennas up for stories that are worth telling. What's a worthy storytelling opportunity? Time sensitive is a big one. Obviously, a news outlet likes to cover things that are of interest at that time. So if you have, applying this to an architect's business, if you have a story, but it's the same story today as it would be 6 months from now, maybe it's about your business, maybe it's about your culture or how you got started, that's not as interesting to a news outlet. So the opposite of that, a great time-sensitive story would be if you have a project and it will be, unveiled soon. Obviously, that's great time-sensitive, and that's what news publications love. News publications also love specificities. So if you are sharing a story, be really specific and as open as you feel comfortable with the specifics of the project. What were the challenges that you came under? Can you share timing? Can you share budgets? Can you share the names of people involved? It gets a little bit tricky because as a business, you're always trying to be careful about confidentiality and respecting everybody that's involved. But if you can plant those little nuggets into the information that you're sharing with an outlet, it's going to be a lot more likely that they will want to cover it. And then again, unbiased. So when it comes to the language that you share, take out all the words that come from a biased perspective and just give the straightforward facts. You'll have a lot better success that way. Okay, so that's what we do. So antennas are up. We're looking for a good story. We feel like we have one. So the next step is we can either write a press release and share it with multiple publications, or we can ghost write an article and share it with just a few publications. So the differences between those two. If I was going to really do a press release, it would be because I'm covering a story that I want multiple outlets, as many outlets as possible to get coverage on. Again, a good example with architects would be a project that's going to be unveiled, or maybe progress on a project, like you're halfway there, you've met a major milestone, and you want as many people as possible to cover that. In that case, it'd be a press release. It's 500 words or less. It's very straightforward. It's totally unbiased, and it just gives the facts. And at that point, it's written and it goes to the publications that you have targeted on your list. The other option is to ghostwrite an article. So the reason we would do that is if we have a really interesting story here. And ideally, we just want one major publication to cover it. If that's the case, we can write the story on behalf of our client, and then we can give it to the publication and offer them exclusivity on it, which is very appealing for a publication. All of this that I'm talking about so far, the most success you can have is when you do as much of the work as possible for people, right? We all know what that feels like when someone comes to us and has done everything for you and just says, hey, do you want this? Everybody loves that. So we can write a story and pitch it to a targeted publication or a few and offer exclusivity to whoever wants to run it. So then we write the story. In that case, I'm sticking with this ghostwriting an article. We write the story, we create a list of targeted editors and writers and send it to them. We offer it to them exclusively, and then we follow up and follow up and follow up and follow up. And all the while we're offering this very graciously. It's their publication. They have every right to accept or decline whatever we're working on. And so we continue to follow up and hopefully get the timing right to where it's a story that they want to run when we have it. And if it gets published, then our work isn't done. We promote on our end. So we take whatever form that press came into, whether it's online or a magazine or newspaper, and now we're promoting it on the client's end through their social media, through their newsletters, tagging everybody, the whole kit and caboodle. So I'm sharing all of this because everything that I've talked about so far are things that you can do for your own business. So nothing I've talked about is like proprietary information or is something that only I or my team are capable of. Again, press releases, people can write them for their own company. They're 500 words roughly. They're straightforward facts. And when you want to get information out there, you think of that list of the publications where it would be so nice if it showed up there and email it to them, and likely you'll get some coverage from it. And the second part is if you have some writing ability to actually write a story and share it with the publications you would love for it to go to, and make that available to them if they would like to cover it. Okay, so now I'm going to show you actual examples of how this has worked for us. And maybe you can see some points as well that would be helpful for you. So the first one is Folded Hills Winery. This is the business I was talking about that I worked at in the beginning, where we were trying to figure out how to get press and putting all the pieces together. So the way that this worked was I wrote a story. It was about our winemaker and pitched it to a few different magazines, and Santa Barbara Life and Style ended up being the ones that wanted to run it. So we gave them the copy. They said, looks great. Then they started asking about photos, and we said, well, if you want to run the story, that would be amazing. We'd also be happy to provide the photography for it as well. So again, going back to that point of making this available and making it super, super easy for people. Like, we are literally giving this beautiful story, unbiased, great coverage, unique perspective. Now we're giving professional photography to go with it. But again, it's all from like this gracious point of view where it's like, here's this, you're more than welcome to use it if you feel like it's a good fit for your readers. How else can we help? And so we got this story covered, and it's beautiful. It's 5 pages. The photography is stunning. The story is really great. And this was something that, yes, it took time and energy and a bit of luck, but to put a price on this would be difficult if we're comparing to a print ad, 1-page print ad at several $1,000s where people just glance quickly versus a story that someone actually reads and it leaves a longer lasting impression. This is a great win for us. So next example is Dylan Star and the Santa Barbara Bowl. So this is a local clothing boutique that we worked with. And this was a unique one because it was with the Santa Barbara Bowl, which is a little bit tricky to get into. I think they get sick of everybody asking them for concert tickets because they're really hard to get a hold of. But we had our sights set on aligning with them. We came up with this idea. So again, back to like antennas up, stories worth telling. What are stories worth telling about this business? So we came up with this idea. What if we paired 6 outfits from this clothing store with 6 concerts that are coming up this summer at the Santa Barbara Bowl? So we wrote the story. We looked at the lineup for the summer. Very cute, very animated, really fun. We thought it was quite different. And we shared it with them to cover for us. And they agreed to it. It was a slow process. We had to win their trust, definitely. But they agreed to it and eventually gave us what we needed to get the coverage for this. So this is example. So here's the story that we wrote. And then we pitched it around locally, and Santa Barbara News wanted to pick it up. We had a shorter time frame. So a newspaper is a shorter time frame. Like you can give a story to a newspaper a week or 2 weeks out and they can run it. Whereas a magazine, you're going to need several weeks to several months ahead of lead time. So we wrote the story. Then we got permission to do a photo shoot at the Santa Barbara Bowl to have these outfits match the concert lineup. They ran the story. It was beautiful. They used all these pictures. They took everything word for word. They put their writer on it as who wrote the article, which we don't care. Like, we're not in this to have our names in print. We want to get coverage for our clients, right? Then, great part was the Santa Barbara Bowl put this on their website. And because they don't update their content all too often, the whole summer when you landed on Santa Barbara Bowl's website, the very first article was this that came up: Dylan Star shines a spotlight at the Santa Barbara Bowl. And you could click to read the story and it would link to everything else. We put it on the client's blog. We shared it with the client's email and sent it out, put it all on social media and tagged everyone. And so for this example in particular, we estimate that the total reach between the newspaper, SB Bowl's website, social media, and email was around 70,000. And again, it took a lot of energy and a lot of following up and building relationships, but it's hard to put a price on not only the exposure, but the credibility that this now gives that local business for aligning with the bowl. Okay, last example is Giffen and Crane. So everyone here is probably familiar with them. They're definitely arguably one of the best residential contractors here in Santa Barbara. And Bruce retired this last year. So I actually reached out to him initially to cover a story for the SBCA because I sit on their board. And then when I started talking to him, I was like, this is a great story. We should really pitch this locally and try to get bigger coverage of it. So how we did this is we knew there was a story here because not only is Bruce retiring, but he's working on his last project and it's about to wrap up a beautiful equestrian facility at Hope Ranch. So we get in touch with Bruce. We have an interview with him and the team, and the story starts to develop. It's not just about Bruce retiring, but there's a bigger full circle goal here that we would love to share with the public, which is, yes, Bruce and Jeff, the original founders, are retiring, but who are the successors that are taking over this company? And how can we convey that this is still going to be a very well-respected, well-run company that is worth working with? So because the founders are leaving doesn't mean that the business goes with them. It's actually going to be a great business, and here's why. So we wrote the article with that as our goal. It includes an interview with Bruce, talking to him about what contributed to building a business that will last past the founder leading it. And then we had the professional photography to go with it of this gorgeous project out in Hope Ranch. And same as before, we pitched it around to local publications, and Montecito Journal asked if they could use it specifically for their real estate issue last December. And then there again, follow up, like gracious the whole way, hoping that somebody takes the story, and then they do. And then you promote the crap out of it on your end. So it's not over once it gets published. At that point, you're trying to like share that with as many people as possible. So those are 3 examples. And I would love to answer questions that you have about press. And if you have questions specifically about or examples about your business, and if you think you have stories worth telling, I would love to go through that as well. So we have here from in the chat box, Natasha, how do you figure out who to send the press release or written article to? That's a great question. So another kind of point I should make about PR firms is that it used to be you would go to them because you felt like they had the secret list to get in touch with, right? And a lot of them likely still do, but like I said, the internet has really changed things, and the high turnover rate in roles has really changed things. And the fact that every business is specific to its industry, right? So if you're at an architecture firm, you are likely going to pitch to architect specific publications if you're going for a national exposure. And so if that's the case, it's unlikely that a PR firm is going to have the right connections for every single industry that they would work with. So to answer your question, it takes some digging and some grit and some determination to find who these people are. We don't have a secret way of doing this. We would do this the same way as you would. So going online, finding the email addresses for the right people to get in touch with. Again, understanding the difference between an editor versus a writer. So if you have a story that's written or a press release that's done, that would go to an editor. If you have an idea that you're trying to get someone to write about, that would go to the writer. A lot of things are listed online on their websites. LinkedIn has been super helpful for us as well, tracking down the key people that we're trying to get in touch with, and also letting that be your first point of contact with them. And again, approaching them from a point of, I have a story, this is a one-line pitch about it. Do you think this is something worth sharing? And that has been how we do it. So hopefully that's helpful to you. How do you navigate or reconcile when there's more than one publication that wants to run a story? That's a great question as well. And I think you're referring specifically to when you have a story and you pitch it to multiple publications, but you're offering exclusivity. So at that case, or at that point, if you have more than one that wants to run it, you can choose the one that you are the most excited about, and then you can let the others know, sorry, Somebody else has decided to pick it up and we're going to go with them. And at that point, you haven't shared the story yet. You tell them, this is something that I have worth sharing. But even if you have, people aren't going to run a story without your permission. So that wouldn't be an issue. Do you have any tips on finding ghostwriters? And are there any disadvantages to doing or advantages to doing a press release and ghostwriting your article simultaneously? That is a great question. Is there any advantages or disadvantages? Yeah, I think advantages, the more coverage you can get, the better, right? So if you send a press release out and now multiple publications are covering that story and you want to take control and write your own version of that story and have somebody run it, there's definitely nothing wrong with that. The reason that I explained the difference between the two and kind of like those two paths that we would take is because typically, if it's a story that multiple publications are going to cover or that you would want to cover, then I would handle that with a press release and leave it up to them to write their own story. But yeah, I don't see anything wrong with like doubling up and having your version of that story and trying to pitch it to publications as well. The advantages definitely is that you want the most coverage that you can get from a story. And I don't see disadvantages to that other than it takes time and energy on your end. As far as tips for finding writers, the way that I've found our writers are all in-house now. So our team of account managers also are incredible copywriters. And before that, I found writers by reading articles and being like, wow, that was a really well-written article, and looking at who wrote it and reaching out to them. So again, I'm trying to like take away the mysteriousness of all this and have it come across so that you feel empowered that this is something that you can do on your end, or at least delegate to people and know that you have a good plan that is proven. So that's how I've found our writers. I have also tried, there's online resources for hiring writers as well. Upwork, upwork.com is probably the most common one. And they do a lot of screening and have a lot of features in place so that you're working with qualified people. But I will say I have tried that a couple times and struggled with it, just with the quality that would come back. So yeah, our team of writers is in-house now, but before that, I have reached out to people after seeing great articles that they wrote. And most often they're freelance writers. And so they aren't exclusive to a single publication. And that even can help you out too, because they could have connections with other publications, or you could share something with them that you want to have a story written about, and they could help it get further than you could on your own. Any other questions? All right.
Okay, Jade, thank you so much. It looks like we've come to the end. Have you got any closing comments?
Just wanted to say thank you all for tuning in and for being here. I hope this is helpful. My whole goal with this was to empower other people to feel like they don't have to hire an expensive company to work with in order to get stories out there. And just the bottom line main takeaway is that just remembering that news outlets and publications are looking for good stories. So if you have a story you feel like is worth sharing, it's definitely worth reaching out to them and seeing where that can get you. If there's any points that we covered and you felt like I missed that, or I wanted to share that with somebody, on our website under services press, most of what I went through today is covered on there. So that's a good reference for you as well. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jade. It's been a great presentation, and thank you for everyone attending. Before we go, I just wanted to mention that Architect Tours tickets are now on sale. This year is virtual, which allows us to visit some projects that would otherwise not be available to be seen. So you can check out the details on our website. All right, well, have a great afternoon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.